Hey everyone, it's me, Arthur Kade, welcoming Rob Cohen to Behind the Velvet Rope. Make sure to check out his awesome new movie, Being Canadian, which is available on demand. It's really a great watch, so check it out. Hey everyone, it's me, Arthur Kade. All right, Rob Cohen. So, what does being Canadian mean? I was just came back from Canada, and people in Toronto are just like us. It actually felt like it was New York. You made a whole movie about what it's like being Canadian. You answered that question. Talk to me all about it.
Well, what's your impression of my homeland? You just got back. Now you can compare it to the U.S.
The French part hates us.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto's like New York, and I love Whistler. So
All
that's
right.
that's that's my impression. But you know what's really cool? You got pretty much every famous Canadian on the planet to talk to you and answer that question. It was pretty cool seeing everybody's answers. What was the consensus you came up with?
Me personally,
Yep.
uh, I'd say the simple answer is that was born and raised in Canada, and I left and have been living in Los Angeles for a while. But going back there, that being Canadian and Canada have just changed so much since I left that I always felt like I needed to defend it like my little brother. And going back there, Canada is now so hyper confident and so cool that I realized that was not necessary. But I was, because I'm Canadian, almost wanted to apologize to Canada for defending them so long because they don't need it. Their Canadian pride is at an all time high.
I felt the same way when I was in Toronto. I literally felt like I was still in the US. You really do feel like you're in Chicago, New York, a major metropolitan city. It's changed so much from what I remember as a
Yeah.
kid. I feel like that's happening all across Canada. What do you think is fueling this enormous confidence boost, this pride that's going on right now?
I think honestly, Canada's realizing besides natural resources and stable banking system and all those other sexy things that the ladies go crazy for. I think it's just that we are realizing that we have a secure place in the world. We have great people that have come out and done great things, but that the country itself is just magical. Like it's unique. It's its own place, and that there is a Canadianness that Canadians now feel more comfortable celebrating. So I think it's just a combination of healthcare and no financial collapse and other elements, crazy mayors, that has sort of made us.
Rob Ford was the best.
Yeah,
Come
he's
on.
the greatest of all time, right?
He is. I want Rob Ford to take over New York. Rob
Well,
Ford takeover hashtag.
I would assume there's some drugs in New York, so he would love that.
How does this all come about? Why do you decide to make a movie about Canada?
I decided for two reasons. I living outside of Canada for so long, I was barraged, as was Colin, my producer, with questions from people that weren't Canadians, with just complete misinformation or disinterest about the country. So I would always have to explain it. And then after literally decades, just decided I wanted to make sort of a video user's manual to hopefully once and for all explain us, because nobody would believe my answers or they'd fall asleep halfway through. And we put the word out to some friends of ours that were also Canadian, that had the same issue, and they graciously wanted to share their own beef. And that's how it started. So I just wanted to sort of get it off my back, but also take this journey to go back home.
I love how you use the term friends. I mean, you've got like pretty much every famous person who's ever come out of Canada on this film. How do you get these people involved? Is it obviously some of it's personal relationships. I'm assuming some of it's also reaching out, saying, "Hey, I'm making a movie about Canada. We need quotes. We need you on here." How does it all happen?
Well, a small group of them are friends, and that's who we started with first. And they were incredibly cool and very generous with their time, from David Steinberg, Dave Foley, Mike Myers, Will Arnett. And then as we reached out to other ones we didn't know, we were very pleasantly surprised and appreciative that people, other Canadians, wanted to chime in and be part of this group. Not because the film was so great, but they had the same beefs. So that's how we got to sit down with people like Alanis Morissette and Rush, and also some Americans that are in the movie as a counterpart, like Ben Stiller or Conan O'Brien or Kathy Griffin. They had known me a long time and also had really funny perspectives on the U.S. So it was just this great ripple effect that people wanted to speak about Canada.
You know why the film is a failure, though, right? You
Well,
could,
because I'm in it.
well, no, because your greatest, well, that's number two. No, your greatest Canadian import, Justin Bieber, is not in it. I mean, How do you not get Bieber in there?
By actively not pursuing him.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So the reaction's been phenomenal to the movie. Talk to me about getting critical acclaim. It's pretty cool to see people actually caring and liking the movie.
Yeah, we this was a labor of love. It took a long time to put it together, and it's a very grassroots movie. And we've been so fortunate to, at our different premieres or people that have seen the movie really like it. So it's very satisfying because it was a lot of work, and it was this life experience for all of us just to get to go back home and meet some of our heroes and get to talk about our country, but also have sort of the epiphany at the end of the movie about this problem that we've had for decades. So it's very satisfying. I mean, we're genuinely thrilled that the movie exists. Hopefully, people like it, but we're thrilled it exists.
I love how there's this road trip quality to it, and you're literally going from one end to the other. There had to have been such a cool adventure like thing happening there, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was great because I'd never been to the Maritimes, the Nova Scotia, that part of Canada, because I grew up in Western Canada, and so we got to drive across the country and go to all these weird places across the way, like our secret maple syrup reserve, and have a couple in New Brunswick give us $7 to fuel our trip, and meet a therapist and a politeness expert. It was sort of like this strange undercurrent of Canadians, but it was inspired by movies like Roger and Me and Sherman's March, where there's a road trip element, and that was really the spine of it. But it also helped the clock of what we were trying to get to for Canada Day at the end of the movie.
One of the things that blew me away is, it's certain famous Canadians in Hollywood. Obviously, Mike Myers, you named your buddy, one of the most famous ones. But some of the people that you had participating, I had no idea were actually Canadian.
Right.
It blew my mind how much has come out of that country in terms of Hollywood. Crazy, right?
Well, who blew your mind? Like, what was
Arnett was one of them, actually. I had no idea Will Arnett was Canadian.
a very proud Canadian?
I had no idea.
Yeah, but that's part of the sort of comedic approach to this movie, is like Captain Kirk or Will Arnett. There's so many people that a lot of people assume are Americans because they're very successful. Dan Aykroyd. But
I know.
oh, really?
Shatner, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea William Shatner was Canadian. That blew my mind as well. I'm like, William Shatner? No chance. And here he's talking about his love for Canada.
Yeah, he started off as a Shakespearean actor in Stratford, Ontario, and that's the thing in the movie. One of the chapters is why we're obsessed with pointing out other Canadians. It's because we have so many people that are successful that nobody thinks are Canadian, and then you go, hey, Captain Kirk's Canadian, and people go, oh. Like they're bummed out for some reason. And so that was part of the movie as well, as we wanted to show all of our great citizens, and they wanted to speak about it.
How hard is it? You're in Toronto, like being in Toronto, it's a major metropolitan city, major art district, obviously tons of stuff happening. We were talking about TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival. But how hard is it to go from being a Canadian star or starting in the Canadian arts to becoming a major US/international star?
Well, I'm neither of those, but I would guess that it's really talent wins out, and I think that the one comment that was consistent with a lot of these guys is they had opportunities in the States just because there are more by volume, and financially it made more sense. So the people from SCTV, to me, are the best example. Like some of the greatest comedic talent of all time: Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short, and they wanted to stay in Edmonton making the show there in this warehouse. But NBC said, we would love you to come do some shows in the States. So you have to decide to pursue that. And I just think it's opportunity. But they all want to stay in Canada or go back. And that was something really heartwarming that we learned from talking to these guys, is most of them still own places in Canada.
Struck me being at TIFF, and I was thinking about it while watching your movie. So many of the journalists that I spoke to, we were talking about being on the red carpets, they talked more about the Canadian artists, whether it's acting or music, than I felt like the US artists. And that's when I started to feel that pride. When you were doing this road trip, did you get that same sense that Canada really almost takes more to their own in their own art scene than the international and US art scene?
I think partially because we're a very small, young country in comparison to you guys or Britain. And so I think Canadians are very proud of the ones that have left and succeeded or stayed and succeeded, because it's harder to stay and succeed on a high level. And so it sort of goes with the epiphany we have at the end of the movie, where Canada is now more cocky in obviously a polite way, but where they want to point out the homegrown talent, and so it's like a chance to root for your kid that now is becoming like a really good athlete. And so I think there's also more and more, like Sarah Polley is somebody who was a local Canadian actress and now is viewed as a very high-end director who happens to be Canadian. And Mike Myers, on the flip side, massively successful, 3 huge franchises under his belt, but is, walks around in a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey because he's just so proud to be Canadian.
Was there a specific part of Canada you felt had a higher success level? So obviously you mentioned you're from Western Canada, but did you feel like, hey, Toronto's more of the epicenter, or Vancouver? Where did you feel like people were coming out of?
Honestly, I think it used to be Toronto, but that's because everybody would go to Toronto, and then it started to become Vancouver, and now it's really fragmented. I know a lot of people have come out of Calgary, where I'm from, and Halifax. There's huge high-end comedic people that have come out of the Maritimes, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and I just think that the high population centers are mainly Toronto and Vancouver, so they gravitate to those places.
So you put this movie together, you get all the talent. Once you finish it and you're looking at it, what were the takeaways that you came away with?
Worst decision of my life. No, it was honestly, the takeaway was that I was so glad we did it. I was glad that we, the producing team, got to have the experience to go back home and have a reason to take this road trip, meet a ton of our heroes, re-examine the way we viewed our country or defended our country, but also it was just a blast. We wanted the movie to have this fun energy, and it's a little silly, it's not scientific, but that it was just a chance to show Canada in a great light with amazing people making comments, but to really once and for all maybe have something out there that is a good, humorous representation of this country we love.
Who were one or two that just blew you away? I get to speak to some amazing people. Who were the one or two that you walked away from and you're like, I wouldn't trade meeting this person for anything?
Besides the people I mentioned, I would say the interview with Rush was one of the greatest things.
That's so cool. I mean, that's so cool.
They were the nicest guys. Yeah. They were hilarious. We were told we only had an hour with them, and we probably ended up having 2 hours with them and then hanging out with them afterwards. And could not have been cooler. And Will Arnett, amazing.
Nicest guy.
The nicest guy in the world. And Howie Mandel. It was one of the most sincere, hilarious, wise interviews that we had. And,
by the way,
and
another
Dave
person
Foley.
I didn't realize was Canadian.
Oh, really?
I had no idea. We've interviewed Howie a million times because we do the America's Got Talent red carpets here usually. Had no idea he was Canadian until the movie.
Very proud Canadian.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I think that's a commentary on how little I know about the industry, more than anything.
No, not at all. It's just that I don't think most celebrities walk around reminding you, unless they have an accent, of what their nationality is, and especially because we look so much like you guys, and most of us are on American TV. You just assume you're American.
That's awesome.
But it's, Howie is the star of a very popular show called America's Got Talent.
And a legendary stand-up, and
of course,
one of the biggest producers in Hollywood at this
point.
Of
course,
killing it.
Yeah, but if you tell somebody like Rush is probably the greatest Canadian band, some people will be like, they're from Canada? But if you just said Rush is one of the greatest bands, they'd be like, of course, they're Rush. Like, they're iconic. I just think some people view learning somebody's Canadian as a weird curveball.
Great stuff, man. Everybody check out Rob's new movie, Being Canadian. Really, really cool stuff. Like I said, I had no idea half of the people were Canadian that were Canadian. You've named some of them. And, just coming from Toronto and seeing that city and having been to a lot of the places, I've been to Vancouver, I've been to Whistler, I've been to Quebec, I've been to Montreal. You really, it is such a diverse country, and it is such a unique country and such a culturally established and just growing country that's really cool, and you give it a really comedic and fun spin.